leave it at a fixed place. But if it's if it winds up being a specific thing, we don't have to change it very much. I'll just measure what the pot is and put a fixed resistor in here and be done with it. Yep. So that's sort of how we've dealt with the controls on it. This is the controller. Beyond that, it's pretty simple. It does have an RS-232. I think you can program it. There's a little fuse here, so we do need to be able to get to it and hook up the wires. But the oddity was that it came without a case.
It came without a case. In a box.
It came in a box just like this, heat sink, but no enclosure. So we've kind of cobbled together one out of aluminum and spray painted it black. That's kind of the drill. That one we have to mount. This is our TIM 600. This is a water-cooled controller. Here's our water connections right here. Here's our control signal plug. I'll have to put together that wire. That's where all our various signals are. A regen pod or brake signal or accelerator. We have an electric accelerator in this car already, so I just have to steal those signals. It's a Hall effect. And various other signals that go in. Our two battery cables, which will go to our contactor, and this is an inlet for the three-phase wires to the motor and some little wires for encoder signals that give it the RPM and so forth for the motor. So this is programmable. It'll do 400 amps. It'll do up to 400 amps, up to 400 volts DC. Probably not both at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
But that would be 160 kilowatts. And that would be a lot of power, about 200 horsepower peak. One of the things I've been playing with on controllers, and we're going to probably, I would say our future is pretty much with AC. I like the regen already, and the concept. And the other one is water cooling. We might be able to get 400 amps at 400 volts out of this if we can keep it cool. Yep. And the same with the motor. And water is about 3,500 times better at removing heat than air. So we're going to kind of abandon the air-cooled concept. It's much simpler, lower maintenance, but my sense is, you know, the Tesla, actually a guy took it Laguna La Seca?
Oh, Laguna Seca up in Northern California.
Right.
Out to the track,
a little track out there, and they went out and did about 3 laps. The Tesla limped back into the pits. Tesla's story was it's designed for daily driving. It's not really a race car. This for $157,000. It was a heat problem. They're air-cooled. Their motor's air-cooled, and their
the controller. Yeah.
They call it a PIM, but electronics module up in the front of the car is air-cooled, and the whole issue is getting rid of heat. We're going to go to water-cooled, and I want to go where I don't have leaks on the road, busted hole.
Right.
So we're using like Messier pumps, AN fittings, braided steel hose, you know, aluminum fill tanks and so forth, and probably the original radiator, right?
Oh yeah, the original radiator. We're going to try to take down any opportunities. We've got some things to deal with. This fitting here, for instance, on this controller, it's a male fitting with an O-ring metric on the inside. There's no way we could replace that with an AN fitting that we could purchase. So I guess the thought is to take some 3/4 hose, because this is a 3/4 fitting, the braided hose, and put a clamp there. So that'd probably be one of our places that we really can't use AN fittings, you know, with this. But we will.
Well, I want it as tight and dry as I can get.
I think so.
I don't want it bursting on me, but I think if we do a big boy, see the advantage is the internal combustion engines. They're so inefficient. Basically, an internal combustion engine is designed to blow heat out the front of the car through the radiator.
Right.
Motion is a byproduct of that.
Exactly.
And
if it sat still, it burns up.
we found this Summit Racing thing. Brian has redone a couple of cars, his Carmen Gia and so forth in the past. So, and he used to work for some kit car guys, magazines and so forth about custom rod cars. And so we're finding some very interesting, albeit pricey, little components to do for an internal combustion engine car. It's gross overkill for an electric car. But again, I find, here's the problem with these controllers. I've run into a couple of people that are using controllers, and their car does not live up to their expectations. It's not going as fast as they thought. The controllers have gotten to be too good. They do a current limiting when they reach a certain thermal temperature, typically 85 degrees centigrade, to save themselves. So they simply reduce the current. Now, in the old days, they'd shut down. Now they're getting where they actually reduce the current until they get the temperature they like. So there's nothing wrong with these guys' cars. It would go great. It's in thermal limit, and they don't have the RS-232 hooked up or the CAN bus and monitoring the signals to know that. So it just seems like at the upper end they don't have much oomph. Yeah,
it just doesn't feel right. But they've got the right feeling, and it's heat.
Well, again, one of the problems we've had over and over on the car is we don't know what since it's the first time we've done it, we don't know what it's supposed to feel like when we get done.
That's right.
We put that water heater in there, and it heated, it cycled, it seemed to be operating, and I was just a little disappointed. It wasn't putting out a lot of heat.
Right.
But it was working, and so I thought, well, I guess this is, you know, just...
This is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Brain got my eVision installed in my air duct where I could see some numbers, and I had a big light, and I'm looking at it, and this thing's drawing 3.5 amps. Well, 3.5 amps at 375 volts is not 4 kilowatts. It's
not 4 kilowatts, no.
We called Victor, and he said, send it back, and he'd put it on the pallet with all the other ones he's sending back that have bad little control modules in the heater. He sent us another one, and we put it in there. I'm afraid we'll melt the windshield. It's putting out 110 degree Fahrenheit air, and a lot of it off this 4 kilowatt heater. It's going to fry us in the car.
It's cold out when we have it on.
Right. And so I thought it was working, but it wasn't really.
Right.
And you get into that. If you don't know any different, how would I know that it's supposed to be hotter? And what does hotter mean?
Right. How hot is
How hot is hotter?
Yeah.
So to maximize our output from these motors and these controllers, and to protect their lives, this is a very expensive system. I think we can extend it. I think it'll go 1,000,000 miles if we can control the temperature.
Right.
By using internal combustion engine components like the existing radiator, which we have to because we've got to have the evaporator for the air conditioner.
Right.
And a good pump. This is rated at 8 liters per minute. That we've got a pump that'll put out 20 gallons a minute. And so, you know, I think by moving a lot of water through and moving it through a radiator, that we can keep the temperature down and remove the heat from that motor and that controller. And I think it's going to be an important item.
I do too.
And it'll let this operate at its maximum power without complaint. Worse, they don't really complain. They just limit themselves.
And you don't know. That's right.
So we need to mount these two in the car. What do you got going for me here?
Well, it looks like you were working on this, and we're finishing it up here. The plate that, like we said, is going to hang from the bolts that we already had in place for the mount for the motor, for the end of the motor. The two bolts that we were talking about that go through the top of the adapter, and we're going to bolt it right through here. 4 bolts. We've got 4 bolts here. Here's the front, so we can get to the hoses. Front of the car, it'll sit like this, and we'll mount that down.
Well, let's throw this thing on there, mount that down, and show me how that's going to sit in there. You've got some bolts. The Tim's comes with some flanges already that you know, have for bolt holes. And we want this to hang out over the front.
So we've got some 6mm Allens. We've got a nice little stock of metric hardware here that we're accumulating as we go through this project and other projects. But the idea is just to put this through. We've already drilled it, wash